Hello, welcome to World Drum Talk. I'm Ted Nichols from Drums Around the World. I'm opening up a new YouTube channel. I've been teaching for many years, and I teach at Salisbury University, and I specialize in African and Latin rhythms in the drum set. So today is not a world music type of thing, but it was influenced by the world because rock and roll was influenced heavily by Africa and Latin America. We're talking about a Beatles song that was written in 1969 by the Beatles, recorded on a reel-to-reel four-track recording device where the drums were on one track. They were recorded with 7 microphones summed to that track and used a compressor to work with them. That's what they used, a lot of compression back then. And then the other tracks were bass, guitar, and vocal. And there's a maraca on that other track with the vocal. So the interesting thing about this is this song was inspired by Chuck Berry. That's what they were thinking. And the other interesting thing about this, Timothy O'Leary knew the Beatles. And without getting into the full detail of him, this was during the time of LSD. He was going to run for governor in California. He wanted a campaign song, so he wanted the Beatles to write him one. So the Beatles wrote this song, and ended up that he got arrested for marijuana, having marijuana in his possession, and he never did run for governor. And the Beatles, they said this wouldn't have been a very good campaign song. It's an interesting song. It has some interesting words. You can look them up. But the most interesting part is he got sued by a guy named Levi, who was the producer of Chuck Berry for the song You Can't Catch Me. They were sued on the fact of words written in the song. So the song, the Beatles sang, "Here come old flat top, he come grooving up slowly." Barry sang, "Here come a flat top, he was walking up with me." So there you go, the two very similar. He won the case. Levy owned Chuck Berry's songs, just like the Beatles lost some of their songs and then they got them back. As part of the compensation, I think it was $6,000 it was paid. Part of the compensation ended up being that John Lennon had to record 3 of Levi's songs. He never did, so he got sued for breach of contract. Later, Levi released a bootleg Beatles album, which a lot of us listened to in '69. I was playing in bands then. Well, that's kind of an interesting thing. It was done in the Abbey Road studio. Famous picture on the album cover where they walked across a zebra-striped crosswalk on the road, Abbey Road. The studio at that time was called EMI Studios, and a year later it became Abbey Road Studio. So it's a very interesting thing that the Beatles had. Controversy of whether John Lennon was dead because Come Together Over Me. He wasn't. It was just one of these things that everybody did. So in the beginning of this song, they kind of slowed it down when they got in the studio. They'd been working on it. It was recorded live. So in the very beginning, you have a part over here that goes like this. The first measure that I talk about in this lesson with one of my students would be this particular measure here. So at the end of that, you want to go down to that. You do that 4 times. And you'll have to work on how you're doing it with your sticking. This one, if you just do hand-to-hand sticking, the left hand is the last thing that hits this drum, and you go down here and finish it up. Then in the verse, which would be the second measure that he would be working on, you have this. You have on the tom-tom, you're playing, this would be what you're playing. You're not playing on a cymbal. You're playing on this, is what's doing in this. So that's the same thing as a cymbal pattern would be. 4 in the floor, just move down to here. Now you do that 6 times. If you're listening to a verse, you don't have to count that. You can, but you're listening to the words, and eventually you get it kind of memorized to where it changes. At the end of the 8-bar phrase, the 6th on the 7th and 8th bar, you play something different, which kind of leads you back to the intro. So you play this. Which in written terms is dotted 8th and 16th to a quarter, 1, a 2, 3, a 4. You do that twice, then you're back to the beginning. You're back to the beginning again. You do that whole verse again. So now you've had intro, verse, then you go to your first chorus. So the chorus is 2 bars long, and this happens a lot with the choruses. You know, you can have any length of time. Could be an uneven number. This is an even number. Then this is going back and forth. Normally, if you're playing the pattern, you'd be playing this. They leave out the symbol and just do this. And you rest on that 4th beat, leading back to, guess what? The intro again. So the intro is just part of the song. It's not like you're going to the beginning every time. You're just going to the same pattern. So then you go back and you do a verse again. Then you're going to do chorus 2. Okay? And then you have sort of, I call this a transition. This is like the beginning again, but you only do 1 measure. On the second measure, you do a fill. So on the second measure of your fill, you do this. So you've done this. Now I started that with my left hand. Coming from this. Rather than doing this. And doubling. You have to double somewhere in there. So I double the left up there. So that's what you choose. So you do that first measure the normal way. The second measure you do that. Then it goes into the solos. I call that a transition. It's like half of the intro. You can call it whatever you. And it has a fill. The drummer always usually fills when something different is coming. That fill leads you into the solos. You could change that fill. You don't have to play the same thing that he did unless you're trying to be a Beatles copy band and learn a song exactly like it was. So the next time in your solos, you've got 2, 4, 6, 8 bars of the solo, and then another 2-bar transition there that comes in between. And after that transition, you would go back to another verse, okay? If you were in sheet music after that, you would go back to a sign in the sheet music, which took you back to a verse. And that sign would look like an S. But we're not, you all aren't reading sheet music. He is, but you're not. So in the solos, you're doing this for 2 bars. It's kind of like grown from. It's grown from that. So you're doing that. You're doing that twice. Then you have 2 2-bar phrases. So the first bar is exactly like what's in on the regular music. 1 and 2, 3 and 4. Then. So you've got. So you're going to play that. And 2. So you got 3 and 4 E and 3 and 4 E and 3. So and 4 E and. You're going to go down on the E and. So that particular pattern, that's 1/8 followed by 2/16. The reverse of that is 2/16 followed by 1/8, and that's what this fill is. So you're hitting a bass drum here, and 4 E and. So you're doing that kind of a fill, if that makes sense to you. The second times you do it, you're going to do something different. In the second phrase of the 4-bar thing, you're going to go, and 4 E and. Again, this is semantics to how you play it or even how you hear it. That's the way I heard it. So first one you did is this, 1 and 2. The second one, 1 and 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2. And you go down. Okay, so that's 6 bars of the 8-bar phrase. Remember, we have an 8-bar. We actually kind of have an 8-bar phrase again for the lead, and then you have another 2-bar area where you play on one, and then you have 7 bars rest. That could be another chorus. I didn't call it a chorus. So after that, 8 and 9. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, or 8 and 9 as far as for the measures that you're studying from my sheet. You have a different kind of a funky kind of a beat. That's the first measure there. 1 and 2, 3 and 4. And so now that kind of gets you into the boogaloo type of drumming, where you're putting a note in between cymbals. So 1 and 2, 3 and 4. Eventually your hands will memorize that. You won't have any trouble doing that. Okay? So this fill, again, is a little different. This fill is exactly like the one was back in measure 7 if you had the sheet music, and I can give you the music that I had for this, which has 10 different rhythms that you do. So 8, measure 8 and 9 on the page are measure 7 and 8 if you're reading the music. First measure goes like this. Second measure. And if you have, I did that on a different time. If you have more times, you can certainly do whatever you want. You could change what you're going to do, for your own style. So after that, you have I didn't write this in the measures. So after that, once you have that at the end of the solo thing, it's kind of like a chorus again. So you go 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So then you're going to go back to just the verse. At this point, you're not going back to the intro because you've played something sort of like the intro. So then you're back to the verse again. You play the whole verse. Then you're going to get to the end of the verse. So that was a thing where you went back from a sign to the verse, which has the sign on it. Then you get to another thing called a coda, which actually goes to your final chorus 3. And in this chorus, he's playing 4 on the floor on the bass drum. And in this case, instead of 1, 2, 3, 4. Again, it's up to you if you want to do exactly what I've written. You can certainly do it different. Then you're back to the beginning again, where you do 3 measures of the same thing like normal. You do that 3 times. Then you're going to go to another fill, just like the transition that we did last time. So you're not doing triplets this time. Triplets would be, so you're doing some 16th notes. 3E, 4E, and okay? So you have finished another intro section, and instead of doing a verse, you're going to do the outro, which repeats and fades. You can listen to the outro. And with the outro, you've got your own ability to do. So the outro is kind of like this. It's 1 and 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2. Then you'd have a fill. And I just did some things on all 3 of my drums. You can kind of do what you want, and then that fades over time. So that's been our come together talk, and I have more on this, and I'll have some intro on this. So thank you for tuning in to the World Drum Talk. See you next time. Ted Nichols signing off.